Hey everybody, just doing some inking this afternoon. I thought I'd come on Facebook here and the YouTubes and live ink with you. We're making comics, we're making mini comics all week over in Comics Camp 2020. And I have a lot of inking to do, so let's do some together. We're practicing our mini comics mindset this week, which means thinking about your story and your reader and how you turn your story into a book you can make lots of copies of to get to lots of readers. And one of the things we're trying is we noticed if I number the pages of this mini comic format and the ink goes through the paper, then I better do the two sides on two sheets of paper. So I am actually tucking another sheet of paper in here and I'm treating them as one sheet. And in the final book, when I fold it up, it's going to read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages in a book. We'll staple the final copies, we'll cut the top, and we'll have a nice book that we can read there. But for now, using my mini comics mindset, I'm just going to think of these as two separate pages. And I'll ink through these, starting on page 1. I'll ink through all 8 pages. We'll get a couple of them done now and a couple done later. So I'm going to take this second sheet, the second side, and I'll set that aside so I'm not inking on top of it. With this humid weather, the ink's going to bleed right through the paper. I'll show you what I mean, actually. So I've actually penciled this out, and I'll tell you about it as we get started. But let's just lay down some ink. I'm tracing over my pencil lines with the ink, which makes it so much easier to read. You probably couldn't read that title at all because I penciled it so lightly. I always pencil as lightly as possible so I can make changes. But now when I ink it, it's nice and dark, right? That's just we've been talking about this all summer in Comics Camp, the PI process, pencil, ink, erase. And it's definitely part of mini comics mindset because I'm penciling, inking, erasing so that my story is easy to read for this reader. Inking also helps with the photocopier or the printouts or whatever is going to help me get my comics out to lots of readers. So just from inking that word, you can see right away that the ink bleeds right through the paper. That's why I said, no way am I going to draw my story on this side. It would be destroyed. I'll actually tuck a whole other sheet under here and treat that as my second side. So there's my page 2, right? But for now, like I said, I'll leave that aside and just get some inking done. Ever living. This is not a fast sport, live inking, because I'm going to ink very carefully. I want to get my words. My pencil helps me see where my words go. My ink helps me see my words. So this mini comic is drawn from a speech given by Frederick Douglass. I have been thinking about this speech a lot lately. It was given, it's technically an oration. It's called an oration when it was published. Oration at Corinthian Hall, Rochester, New York. Oh, I see I misspelled that. Corinthian Hall. I misspelled that in the pencil, so I'll fix it now. And I'm going to squeeze Rochester a little to fit NY in there. This is one of those mini comics where it might be a little bit squeezed, and I'm okay with that. I want it to look like a handmade, not quickly, carelessly done, but a handmade, in-the-moment kind of mini comic. And the date of Frederick Douglass's oration at Corinthian Hall, Rochester, New York, this is a famous, famous speech. July 2nd, 1852. What is that, 170, 1850 would be 170 years ago. So 168 years ago, right around now. I'm going to put drawn by and my name. So I take credit for artwork. It's important to sign your name to your artwork, or at least a name, pen name. So your readers know who done it. I might erase those page numbers. I'll see I'll decide if I need them or not. That'll be my page 1 right there, though. And then I had this idea. I love, there's so many photographs of Frederick Douglass, amazing photographs. And I was trying to design a cartoon character based on Frederick Douglass. And I just didn't feel up to the task of drawing such an amazing visually, people know what he looks like. You know what they're looking for. So I had this idea of going back to one of my favorite cartoonists, Crazy Cat by George Harriman, and maybe letting Crazy Cat, here's Crazy Cat playing this banjo here. Crazy Cat is this amazing character. There's a lot about her written in comics, but Crazy Cat could come in and maybe read Frederick Douglass's speech, because Crazy Cat has a lot of interesting observations about the world, and I wonder what that conversation would be like. So I never draw Crazy Cat, but I can learn from George Harriman basically what crazy looks like. She has a sort of a ribbon on her neck that sticks out and back. I'm going to draw it a little differently from George Harriman, but as long as you look at it and you're like, that looks sort of familiar, I'm happy. Sometimes Crazy's mouth isn't very visible. And Crazy tends to have mitten hands here. Just kind of scribble inked in. And not a specially defined body. Let's see, we'll just kind of scribble ink it in. And that'll be Crazy Cat standing there. And then the idea was, this is a speech that Frederick Douglass was invited to give a speech at an abolitionist gathering on the 4th of July. And it's a powerful speech. Wow. He comes and he says, what to the enslaved person is your 4th of July? And he just kind of, wow, he just says what he feels about the day. About this was in the days of slavery, right? In 1852, years before the Civil War. So, so I figured we'd let Crazy Cat read a couple lines from George Harriman from Frederick Douglass's speech. And it won't really look like Crazy Cat. It'll look like Marek drawing Crazy Cat. Hi, Sonia. How are you doing? From Frederick Douglass's home? You live close to, Sonia says she lives close to Frederick Douglass's DC home, and so many amazing photographs. Yes. Yeah, they say, I read David Blight's biography of Douglass, and they say he was the most photographed American of the 19th century, right? So anyways, all the stuff I'm about to, I'll link a page or two here. This won't be a super long session, but I will show you this. Pull this up. I came across James Earl Jones reading Frederick Douglass's speech, right? And I was listening to it, and I realized he only read a couple lines from the speech. This is a long, long speech. And it goes on. He must have spoken for an hour or more, I don't know. And he talks about slavery in the US and the hypocrisy of the US celebrating liberty on the 4th of July, religious liberty, the church responsible. He really had a lot to say. And one of the things I noticed, he starts in with a history of the 4th of July, and he keeps referring to fellow citizens, right? He keeps talking about, he refers to his audience as my fellow citizens. And he's up there speaking as a citizen of the US who did not have full citizenship rights, as an escaped former enslaved person, right? So let's see, I'll call that back up. So let's see what he had to say. Just a reminder, this will ultimately be a single piece of paper, double-sided to make the copies, so I can fold it up, staple and cut it, and I'll have a little 8-page book, and you can read through it. But for now, because my ink bleeds through the paper, I'm treating these 2 sheets of paper as if they were 1 sheet. So this is page 1. This will be page 2, but I'm going to move the page 1 piece of paper out of the way. I don't want the ink bleeding through and spoiling my artwork. So at the start of the speech, what's he saying here? It'll take me longer to ink these excerpts than the whole speech took, I bet. But I think highlighting these are some lines I wanted to highlight for myself, just inspirational lines. Really interesting to see how Frederick Douglass was thinking of really change, social change, progress. revolution, counter-revolution. So he says, this is the 4th of July, the birthday of your independence. Remember, he's called to address an abolitionist meeting around the 4th of July in 1852. Frederick Douglass was born into slavery, into enslavement in Maryland, grew up there, eventually, as he said it, stole himself to freedom, right? Independence. Escaped to the north, eventually had to flee the north to Ireland or England, and couldn't come back for several years, I think, after John Brown's raid because of his connections with John Brown. But he lived for years and years in Rochester, New York. And he's in Rochester as he gives this speech. So he stands up in front of this abolitionist group and he says, this is the 4th of July, the birthday of your national independence and your political freedom. And I almost want to, I don't know exactly how he enunciated his speech, but I want to call attention to that because he's saying, you, my audience, you're celebrating this, my fellow citizens. So he's emphasizing that they're all citizens, residents born into the US, but he's not celebrating national independence and political freedom necessarily, because his family and peers are still affected by slavery in 1852, by injustice, if you want to think more broadly. And that's how I'm coming at this. I'm actually, I found as I made this mini, the lines that spoke to me, I want to know more about slavery in the US. I want to know that history. I don't want to sugarcoat it, but I'm also producing minis for really an all ages comics camp. And I want to focus on, if at all possible, a positive message that talks about progress and freedom and in some ways gives us hope. And he's going to talk about hope on this next page, actually. So those are the lines I gravitated towards. On another day, I might have gravitated towards other lines. Let's see. Yeah, that one doesn't really look like Crazy Cat there, but that's okay. It's a reference to Crazy Cat. It's not necessarily Crazy Cat. It's little cartoon animals. Sidestepping Frederick Douglass's actual appearance with his hair or his hat or his suit or anything like that. His glasses are not non-glasses, beard or non-beard. And maybe I'll draw like a nondescript audience here of other animals, kind of a diverse audience of. George Harriman drew wonderful crowd scenes with all these animals in Coconino County. But that's not the point of this mini. So I'm just going to quickly sketch in a couple animal shapes and we'll be done with it. Because what I really want to focus on are Frederick Douglass's words. My fellow citizens, he says to his auditors. All right, he's standing at the lectern there. Now remember page 3, let's just double check our book here. If it folds up like this, I'm using 2 pages to protect from ink bleeds. 1 will be there, 2 will be there, 3 will be right here, which means I can turn that around and there's my page 3 ready to ink. So maybe we'll just do the page 3 for now. And then I'm going to be back at 5 tonight, actually, to finish this up and share it with the comics campers. I just thought I'd come on now during the afternoon since I was inking anyways. Say hi. Put a couple lightning bolts in here. So Douglas says, hope is much needed. In his era, in 1852. This was a line that spoke to me today, here in 2020. Hope is much needed amidst the dark clouds. That lower, that's a very 19th century verb. The dark clouds that lower about the horizon. So he sees the storm clouds of the Civil War gathering. Many people did. But he's kind of speaking here. The idea I got from David Blight's biography was he was really speaking as a prophet here in the biblical sense. Frederick Douglass knew his biblical prophets, and he is holding his fellow citizens to task for the state of the nation and the world, humanity. So let's see. I'm trying not to make my crazy cat look like Richard Nixon, which is kind of a danger with crazy cat with those pouchy cheeks and the 5 o'clock shadow, but that's a risk you got to take as an animal cartoonist. Like I said, I'm being kind of casual. Some bits of this picture might get clipped off. Being kind of casual in the way that, let's just look at Harriman's work here. Here's a crazy cat, October 6th, 1940. You can see how casual Crazy Cat George Harriman was. His characters kind of look a little different each time he draws them. And he drew them thousands and thousands of times. So I'll take a page from his book and let my Frederick Douglass cat here look a little different each time I draw him. And this is Ignat's mouse. I thought I'd better work Ignat's in. Ignat's is the mouse that, well, it's complicated. Hangs out with Crazy a lot. Frederick Douglass said in 1852, the eye of the, I know there's so much suspense when somebody's live inking. The eye of the reformer is met with angry flashes. So he's citing the dark clouds and the angry flashes. He's setting up these storms on the horizon that are coming. I think he could see the Civil War was going to be necessary because he'd been working for, a decade at this point, trying to advance the cause of abolitionism, freedom, justice, equality, and he could see more was needed than just words. And he says that much later in the speech. Let's see, I'm going to darken some of these clouds. I don't think I'll darken around the words. I want those words super easy to read. I want this to be the kind of mini comic you can just pick up and read through quickly and then go about your day and kind of have these images and words in your mind. At least a couple quotes from Frederick Douglass. Let's do one more page. And remember, this is blank on the back because I'm doing my two sides separately. And then I'll photocopy it and make it double-sided in the photocopy. So let's see here. Put this back together. All right, shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. So there's my page 1. There's my page 2. Page 3 will come right next to page 2 there. Page 4 will be here. There it is. It works. It's really important I get my pages lined up properly when I do this. So one of the things Douglass said before he really lit into the present moment, 1852, is he says, okay, it's the 4th of July. You, my fellow citizens, are celebrating your national independence. Well, what does that mean? Let's look at 1776. I added these words in 1776. So he says, like, then feeling themselves. I changed his wording slightly here. This is approximate, slightly paraphrased to fit into an 8-page mini comic, because this is a long hour-plus speech. So he gives a little historical context to his argument for his anti-slavery arguments in 1852. In 1776, feeling themselves harshly and unjustly treated by the British, your fathers, my fellow citizens, your fathers are the founders of the country, right? Your fathers petitioned in a decorous, meaning, dignified, according to the rules, respectful, dear King of England, please do not tax us more than is proper, and loyal manner. And were treated with indifference, coldness, and scorn. So he frames the 4th of July narrative as a narrative of people petitioning for fairness and being treated with indifference, coldness, and scorn. I can't fit coldness onto this line, so we'll say indifference and scorn. And his abolitionist audience would definitely resonate. That would resonate with them, right? And when I read that line, I thought, okay, crazy cat will be kneeling here, like decorously, respectfully petitioning. Crazy is kind of like a sack body, stick figure arms, maybe hands clasped in petition. One knee down. Crooked tail. Boy, there's nothing so that puts you in your place than trying to draw somebody else's amazing comics character. I still will never quite get crazy, but there's crazy, acting it out, petitioning in a decorous, respectful, and loyal manner. And what happens when they are met with indifference and scorn? And he frames the whole Revolutionary War in that context. And then he says, that's what we're facing now. In 1852, you can petition all you want, but there has to be something else to back it up. It's a pretty revolutionary speech, actually. So there's half our mini comic. I'm going to keep inking that. I'm going to run now, but I will keep inking that. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time this evening, and we will do some more inking. We'll hopefully have this finished, and we can look at how these mini comics come together. And I have a couple examples of student artwork to show you too. So Comics Camp is over at my site there, marekbennett.com/comicscamp. We've got lots of information about it. We're drawing pretty much daily, all summer long. Feel free to join us anytime, join anytime, draw with us anytime, pay what you can. Pretty open, pretty accessible, I hope. And this week we're practicing mini comics mindset, doing these little tricks like drawing on 2 sheets of paper to keep your ink from bleeding through, and then ending up with a cool 2-sided book you can share with your family and friends. I think that's it. Great. I'll see you folks at 5. Please come join us again. We'll be back here, or actually over on the Comics Workshop Facebook page. Hope to see you. Thanks for joining us. Have a great afternoon.